Hey y'all, welcome to Conversations with Heavy Cardboard. Today is a really special day as I have our guest here in person at HCHQ all the way from Germany. He is the head and founder of Spielworks, original publisher of such big hits as the original Arkwright, award-winning Arkwright, I must say, La Granja, the Cole series, Solarius Mission, Colonialism, and a host of other games. He's a big fan of Schalke 1904 and Iserlohn Roosters. I'm, of course, talking about Uli Blennemann of Spielworks Games. Welcome to Heavy Cardboard, Uli.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me over here. It's really a pleasure being here at your beautiful HQ, and I'm really enjoying myself.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. It's something that we have talked about doing ever since just after Essen last year. You were like, hey, are you going to Gen Con, this and that? And I was like, maybe, I don't know. And you were like, maybe I could come by for a couple days beforehand. Absolutely. We're happy to have you here. So it's been a lot of fun the last 24 hours or so having you here at the house. So thanks for coming.
No, thank you for, as I said, having me here.
Yeah. So we'll get started then. You just had your first Vietnamese pho.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
Really great stuff. So I didn't knew it at all from Germany. So it was good choice by you selecting this.
Glad you enjoyed it. All right. And earlier today, we had a live stream of Gentis, the new release coming out, or technically out already, but it hasn't hit American shores yet. That was a lot of fun, and you took the lead on teaching that, and I had a blast. So thanks a lot for doing that.
Yeah, thank you for playing, and I'm glad that you enjoyed the game so much.
Yep, definitely. All right, so let's go background. Like, why are you in board games? I'm not saying board game publishing, but what got you started in the hobby to begin with?
As quite common in Germany, at my time when I was a youngster, we played with our parents a lot. So typical German games, and so. We were used to playing board games. And then I have an older brother, 3 years older, and we together played some games, so even some historical games at that time. And I got into wargaming when I was 13, 14.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And at that time, there were hardly any wargamers in Germany. And then... It was Diplomacy, Cosmic Encounter in the early 80s. So, and gradually I broadened my spectrum of games and got into modern type Euro games. Yeah, well, that is the history behind it.
See, and that's really interesting because whenever I talk to any American-based, whether it's designers, publishers, whatever, I find it interesting because a lot of us folks that board gaming isn't as common as it is over in Germany, and to where it's like, of course we play board games, whereas here it's like, no, board games are for kids. A lot of people still have that stigma attached to it, so it's completely different than what it is here.
Yeah, yes and no. Although I would say still and that most adults in Germany think that board games are for kids. It's
really
also, yes.
Okay. All right.
But still, there's there's a larger portion, most probably, than in the U.S. right now, who have played board games with their parents. But the parents are stopped playing board games when the kids grew up, so they weren't playing it for their pleasure, but so that the family can have a great time together, which is perfect. But they weren't players per se, not gamers as we say nowadays.
Okay, all right. So what then? You woke up one day and said, you know what, I hate money, I will start publishing games. How did that come to be?
Yeah, well, first I thought I need to have some money because I was studying at that time, and I was studying history and Eastern European history and politics, and I thought, well, you either can try to become a teacher, which I did not want to. I did not want to become a teacher, or you have to try something else. And I thought, well, I've always played games. I know a little bit about war games. Let's start a wargaming company. And of course, with hindsight, it's a strange decision, but I tried it and it worked. So I had a wargaming company for 6 years in the 90s. So that's how I started in board gaming.
Okay, so how did that transition from that to where you are now?
Yeah, well, in 99, another wargaming publisher from the US bought Moments in History. So that was for me a lot of luck. Nobody, especially not me, had expected this, because Moments in History was a very small company. But at that time I had a little bit of money because of the sale of the company.
Sure.
And as you just mentioned, I'm a huge football or soccer fan.
Right.
And I have, or at least I had a coaching license. So I moved into the sports publishing business. So for about 15 months, I worked for a sports publisher, magazines and books.
Gotcha.
And
Okay. All right.
so I was completely out business-wise of gaming. But one thing is, if you once have been in the gaming business, you know how creative it is, how fun it is. And of course, if you're working from home, on top of that, it's, in my opinion at least, it's better than tomorrow at 8 o'clock turn in your office at your desk, and at 5 o'clock in the afternoon it's over. So you have more independence. Of course, you have also more responsibility, but I like this, or I liked this more. So I got, in 2001, I got a call from Michael Bruinsma, a great, good Dutch friend, who is owner and head of 999 Games, largest Dutch board games producer. And he wanted to form another smaller sister company, and he was looking for a guy running that company. So that was Phalanx Games in the Netherlands.
Yep.
And so we started this. And this was good till 2010, but we made so many mistakes in there. But it was, the real problem was that for Michael, and again, he's a great friend, it was more a hobby. So he has had, and still has, 999 Games as his business and Phalanx Games as a hobby. Phalanx Games wasn't that small. It was larger, as several German companies. We always had English language, Dutch language, and German language production. And so in the end, it was simply too much to be handled in this way. So
too much for a hobby, you're saying? It needed to be a focus?
Yes.
Okay.
We published way too many games, not enough development for some. So we had some critical recognition. So Raja, the US title, is Maharaja. In 2004 was nominated for Game of the Year in Germany. So among the 5 finalists, basically. At that time it was no Kennerspiel, so just Spiel des Jahres, and 5 nominees. And with some other games, we had lots of success. For example, Hey, That's My Fish. That's still done by Fantasy Flight Games. But we did it in German, Dutch, English, in several editions. And we sold a large number of it. So in the 5th number. So I think about 60,000 copies.
That seems like a big number.
That was a big number.
Still.
Nowadays it's even a larger number.
Right,
At that time,
right.
you could sell quite easily 5,000 in one language of a single title. So different times, but there were less individual titles a year. So it was not 500 or 600, just maybe 300.
Sure.
But the difference is there. But the market was also smaller, especially overseas. In Germany, it was already almost as big as nowadays.
Okay. So from Phalanx Games, how did you, because of the way things were going, you decided, okay, I want to stay in the publishing business, and that's how Spielworks came to be?
Yes. In the meantime, I did also some freelance work for several different publishers. This was basically work for hire. So they said, well, we need to develop this certain game. So I did this. But in the end, of course, especially after seeing how Phalanx was run, after getting an experience how other companies in Germany are being run, and also in the US, after seeing how distribution of games got more difficult by the year. So I said, well, I want to try something different, and I want to have control over this. So let's start this, but with a low risk. So the first games with Spielworks were localized English language games or US language games, so war games. Washington's War was my first game, a GMT game.
Mm-hmm.
So that was easy to do, and there was hardly any risk because I wasn't responsible for graphics. They were already there.
Just
the
a straight
development was
reprint,
there,
right? Yeah.
So very easy to do, of course. But I wanted to see if this model can work. So it worked.
And here you are, 2017, and pumping out more games than not, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So let's kind of look into Spielworks then.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go about finding the games that you want to publish under Spielworks?
Yeah, sometimes I find a game. So at some competitions for authors in Germany. So we have two big ones. There's a competition called Hippodice, which is done in March, I think, February, March.
Okay.
And several editors from companies are seeing the finalists. So I did Diluvia Project was a finalist. Solarius Mission was a finalist. Several others were finalists, and also Kalimala by ADC. Blackfire, an October release that was a winner of 2016. So, but I'm also seeing games at Göttingen. At Göttingen in June on 2 days, on a Saturday, Sunday, there are about 300 gaming authors, and they are presenting their games. Most of the time, not already well-known authors, with some exceptions, but especially newcomers are presenting their stuff, and there are lots, maybe 50, 60, 70 different companies from not only from Germany but from the Netherlands, from France, who are taking a look at these games. And well, you have to be frank, some of these games will never be published because they are not good enough.
Okay.
But there are quite a few very interesting games, and sometimes it's even that only one or two mechanics are nice, the rest is not that good, but this can be the job of a good development team afterwards. But sometimes authors are approaching me directly.
So how are you able to sign so many of these award-winning games then?
Yeah, well, sometimes it's luck. I think sometimes I'm really quicker than others. So, but on the other hand, of course, sometimes I see a game and I do not see anything in the game. And afterwards, when I see the game published by others, I say, wow, I didn't miss this. So this can happen. This can, of course, happen. But of course, I'm one of the few who take some chances. If I really believe in a game, then I try to push this to the end. I try to, I guarantee the author that he has quite a bit of influence with some other German companies. You are turning in your prototype, and the next time you see the game is when it's finished. And often some key rules have been changed without informing the authors. I'm not saying that this is necessarily a bad thing, because the editorial teams, they are experienced.
Meaning developers and...
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
But still, for me, it's important to go back and forth with the authors, if it's possible. Because sometimes the author says, well, this is what my statement. You have it already. Do whatever you want to do with it. This is also, of course, a certain attitude. And of course, some authors are happy that they are published, that they are getting published. It's the same in books for a newcomer. It's
Sure.
very difficult to get into this professionally. Very difficult.
So let's talk about the development then. How much of a hand do you play in it? And who are the others, or how many others are there on that editorial team or development team, as you put it?
Yeah, development team is just Henning Kröpke. He is and me. So Henning is more well known because he is working for 2F Spiele, so for Friedemann Friese, and he is basically his right and left hand. There, he's also doing some stuff for Pegasus, but he is pretty local in the Münsterland. There are not too many able gamers, but he's also a friend. So we are the development editorial team. But of course, we have lots of different testers. And I try to step a little bit back from development. So I want to, in the future, let's see if this is going to happen, I want to give the outline, the broad view, how I want to see the game. And Henning then can look more into the details, because it gives me some freedom to do other things. So I think we'll see how this will work out, that this is more profitable for Spielworks.
Okay. That has not been the case up to this point? It's been kind of a partnership between you and Henning?
Yeah, sometimes it also depends on time. How much time we have.
Yeah.
If he is heavily in projects with 2F, I'm doing the majority. If I'm saying now, I'm working now on this game and it needs my attention, but looking at the schedule, we have to move forward on this game, he has to do it. So it's a case by case.
Okay. And there's got to be a lot of trust between you and him then too. I mean, obviously it's your company, so you get final yes or no, right?
Right.
But you obviously trust him quite a bit to allow him to take the lead development on some of these, yeah?
Yes, he's very experienced. So yes, I do 100% of the selection of games, but after that, when we have the game, he will work on it, yes.
All right. Well, on that note, you decide on what games Spielworks is going to publish. Who are you publishing for then? Are you publishing for you, or is it a certain, the heavy cardboard listeners out there, the heavy gamers? But ultimately, who is it who are you making these games for?
Yeah, first and foremost for me.
Okay.
Really, I want to see the game in print. I want to do this game. But of course, I need to be certain that I'm certain. And I need to think that I can sell 1,000 copies of it within a reasonable amount of time. There are some topics that I would not touch, definitely not, especially not as a German publisher. Although maybe I can sell easily 1,000 copies. And sometimes I think, no, this game is mechanically sound, but the topic is so weird, I don't want to do it. But first and foremost, these are I want to have games that I love and that I like. They should be published. This is my...
All right. Now, you said just now that games that you wouldn't touch. Is it thematic reasons you're saying you won't touch, or specifically, are we talking historical war game type stuff because you being German, or?
Yeah, so first, I love GMT. I really love GMT. This is one of the best companies, in my opinion, in the whole business. Not only war games, but general type games. And this, they are moving more and more into this cross-Euro wargamer niche of the hobby.
Sure,
with coin series.
1846, you have the coin, you have the new Time of Crisis, stuff like that. So I hear you.
And second, I think that Lee Brimicom Wood, I think is the name, the designer, is also he's British, a very good designer. He's mainly into air games, but I would have never done a game like Bomber Command, because it's about the air war over Germany. And of course, you have to bomb the cities flat. There is fire bombing in certain areas, of course. You can say most of the war games that I play and I like to play, you don't see anything of this. And
Interesting.
This is, of course, very strange. Look at an operational Eastern Front game. we only play the military aspect, but behind the front, 3 hexes behind the front, there are the Einsatzgruppen, and that the Jewish people are murdered, and you are responsible for that. Of course, you can always say, well, no, I'm just a military command, which is bullshit in my opinion.
Right.
But
okay.
still, I don't want to do a game about the bombing, air warfare over Germany. So, and of course, this is just a single example. There are others, and each and everybody has to draw his own lines. I don't want to tell other people, don't play Bomber Command. You're a bad guy if you're playing this.
Right.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Sure.
But it's just, I don't want to put a Spielworks label on this one.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And, and I don't want to go too far down this road and everything, but this is something that is foreign, I think is a good way to put it to me, because when I play these, whether Eastern Front, war games, whatever, I'll be honest, I don't think about these things, whereas obviously this is your homeland, so this is something that is obviously very personal and very, very.
Yeah, maybe it's really closer to us Germans. And I'm also, as I mentioned, I'm an historian. So, and I'm even a Zeitgeschichtler, so modern historian, so modern times.
All
so
right.
this is my specialty. And I'm still reading a lot about this period, but I have to admit, I love to play Eastern Front games, Western Front games,
right.
And like you, when I'm playing them, I'm not thinking about this.
Right.
So I can enjoy them as historical simulation games that just show the operational history of the campaign.
Sure.
No problem, but of course, this is somewhat strange. So if you reflect about this, it's somewhat strange. Yeah.
No, and I appreciate the honesty and you talking about this, because it's something that me and as an American, I would never. I mean, obviously, it's just stuff that isn't on the forefront of my mind when I'm playing these, but I can totally respect and understand why it would be, considering the difference in nationality, et cetera, and the history between the countries. So that's fascinating to me. So I appreciate that. So let's kind of switch gears a little and go back to something that you touched on that also, I'm sure, and you and I talked about this previously when I talked to you first at Essen, but you mentioned that you wanted to see if you could sell 1,000 copies of a game. So this is a deliberate business model that you've chosen for Spielworks that, well, you know what? I shouldn't answer for you. So why 1,000 copies for a print run?
First, as I briefly mentioned before, I knew how difficult it is to distribute a sizable print run these days. Sometimes, of course, it works if you have a hype behind a game. Out of the blue, sometimes you're selling 10,000, 12,000, 15,000 copies these days, but it's not the norm. Most of the games in Germany are not selling more than 2,000 copies for a print run in over maybe 24 or 36 months. And half of these games are sold for a steep discount after a year, and you are getting paid by a distributor really late. So it's, in my opinion, it was too risky. And I said, well, hopefully I can sell 1,000. And on top of that, I don't need lots of distributors and don't need a large warehouse if I'm able to sell out pretty quickly. And of course, I can sell out a larger portion direct. I can sell a larger portion direct. I don't have
direct
to use
to the customer, you're saying, right?
Yeah,
okay.
B2C
Gotcha.
and not B2B.
Right.
And this also is more attractive, of course, because I'm making more money in this way. So and for me, so far, this is a very good model. But one thing that is also certain in the board gaming industry, hobby, whatever, however you want to name it is, you have to be flexible. So I'm not saying that Spielworks in 5 years will follow this model. Maybe Spielworks is no more because I'm not selling enough copies anymore. Maybe I'm seeing, wow, this is so great now. I'm risking it. I'm going, next game will be miniatures, 10,000 copies. Could be. I'm not
Please
saying
don't.
not. No, and the chances actually are pretty low.
Right, yeah.
But you have to be flexible. You have to adapt to the environment.
To the market,
Yes.
sure. That goes without saying. So if I'm understanding, then you're saying that you're not married to the 1,000 piece print run or copy print run. It's just, you know, it's safe. You don't have to pay for a ton of warehouse space, which really, I imagine, would eat into your bottom line. Yeah.
Yes, right.
And so if things are on a upward trajectory, then it's possible that down the road you could up that to 2,000, 2,500, or...
Yeah, of course, it's also a possibility, but I think then I'll have the problem that some people will wait and see. No, I'm not sure. This game, if I wait a year, it will cost only half the amount. And then it's a circle. Then I suddenly need a warehouse space anymore. Then I have to ask distributors, please help me. I have to move these pallets of games that I still have. And it starts again. But it can happen. It can happen. Maybe the demand is so large, so big, that I'm saying let's go for it.
Okay.
And another reason, which I forgot to mention so far, printing 1,000 copies. I'm not going through Kickstarter or other crowdfundings. Also, nothing is written in stone. You never know what the future will bring. But I'm spending all money up front. So
right.
I'm doing the printing costs. I pay everything in advance. I pay Henning, of course. I pay the artist, the always amazing Harald Lieske. So also a good friend of mine.
And does the majority of the illustrations, artwork, graphic design for Spielworks?
Everything, 100%. And and I'm paying him also upfront. So in total, and the risk is on me. And so with 1,000 copies, I know these are the costs. With 2,000 copies, probably graphics costs are the same, but print run costs upfront are not doubled. Of course, the economy of scale is there.
Sure,
but
right.
Still, it's a larger amount, and I have to sleep well. I want to sleep well. So for me, as I said, maybe, let's say I have 2 really bad games. I think they are great, but nobody wants them. So I can still close Spielworks and say that's what it is. And I'm not in depth because that's fine. But if I have 2,500 copies and I'm selling just 300, 500, wow, that would be very bad.
Okay, all right. So it's self-preservation then.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Tell me about your process. So you go to Hippodice, right? You see a game, you touch base with the author, the designer, you get a game signed. What happens then?
First, when I have it signed, and this is really the truth, I do nothing on it.
Okay.
Because as I just described, as you asked, we do not have the capacity to work on a game immediately that is only out in 2 years. So we have to work on the next 2, maybe 3 games.
Okay.
And but when it's the game's turn, we first test it. Then we get in touch with the author again, making comments. What do you think? Are you happy with this? And we would like to try this out. At a certain point, Harald Lieske, the graphics artist, is invited. He's also a gaming author, and he sees more things, and he can also already make remarks about icons, symbols in there, or no, I would like to have one large game board. Let's have a smaller one, and then each player gets his own player board. So we try to look slowly into how to produce a game as well. And and we have a deadline, of course. Sometimes we make it, sometimes not, and
Okay.
That's a process.
Do you find that there's a mix of levels of development that different games that you have to sign are, whether they're a lot more involved or, this is pretty good, this is pretty close, let's throw some artwork on it and throw it out the door? Or what dictates that, I guess, is what I'm asking.
So very good question first. And of course, I would love to only have games that are 95% ready.
Right.
So that would be perfect. But especially, as I said, I have lots of inexperienced gaming authors, not inexperienced in the way that they do not know games. Some of them have played so many games, way more than I will ever play in my lifespan, but they do not know exactly how to develop a game. So most of the games, of course there are always exceptions, are pretty rough. But it's still, in a perfect world, as I said, a game is fully developed, but then they would most probably go to a larger company and present their game there. Stefan Risthaus games, Arkwright and Gantis are pretty much exceptions. Colonialism was, although that was a newcomer author, was also already very well developed. And in Stefan's cases, he's so long in the industry. He has published so many games.
Mm-hmm.
He knows. I only turn the game in when it's at least 70% done. Most of the time, it's even more than 70% done. And he tested himself, Arkwright, so many times before I even saw the game. Still afterwards, we changed quite a bit, but still, with Stefan, the game is very robust. It's there, yeah.
Okay. So why is it specifically, since you said you're working with so many new designers, why? Is it because you're getting a lot of these from these competitions? Is that, or is there more to it than that?
It's more to it because nowadays even at least 50% of the games I get, the authors are coming to me because they are not finding any other publishers. Larger publishers are, of course, always with exceptions, are not taking too many risks. They want to have a safe bet. So, and then you have a designer who is thinking outside of the box. He has sometimes an interesting new topic, sometimes an interesting mechanic, or he says, well, this game plays in 3 hours. If he presents this to a German publisher, it's immediately out. Almost nobody will talk to you. If you introduce yourself, this is my new title, it has 2 to 4 players, it plays in 3 hours. So they say, okay, nice to talk to you.
Thanks, bye-bye.
But to me, it does not matter at all. So I attract newcomers. I attract people who are thinking outside of the box or have topics that nobody else would touch. Thomas Spitzer's Kohle trilogy, Ruhr trilogy. So that was something that, how can a game that only covers a small part of the Ruhr area and only about coal mining in this small part of the Ruhr area.
What, you're telling me that doesn't get you excited?
And it plays in 2 hours and it needs that amount of wood in there. It will cost a lot of money. Wow, the companies are screaming, running away. But I saw these games have real potential. And this is also one of the reasons, not the main reasons, why I signed Captains of the Gulf by Jason Dinger. Because mechanically, this game is totally different, has nothing in common with Ruhrschifffahrt or Haspelknecht or Kohle and Kolonie, nothing. But it's also, when I played the game for the first time, I thought, well, this is a new Kohle and Kolonie, or could be, because it's fishing in the Gulf of Mexico. So probably 99% of the population of the Earth couldn't care less. But it was very important for Jason. For Jason,
It's
for his
personal.
film, it's
Yes.
a really personal
Yes.
thing, and it's different. But of course, a game has to be good mechanically. If you just throw some Monopoly on top of it, then you say, well, yeah. So this is important to me too.
That makes sense. And I played Captains of the Gulf when he brought it to HeavyCon this year, and really impressed. I was very pleasantly surprised. I'm excited for it. That's going to be tentatively next Essen, so
Yes.
Essen 2018, right?
Yes, right.
Okay. So I kind of want to delve a little bit more on that subject of a new topic or a unique theme or something along those lines. And for those that are watching, there's one of the game that put Spielworks on the map for me was the game that's over my shoulder here, and that's Colonialism. You want to talk a little bit about that and how I say that I applaud both you and Scott, the designer, for taking a risk with that game.
Yeah, man, and this game was pretty special for me because I saw the game on BGG. There was already a print and play version out there. Scott had done this, and as I mentioned, as I said, the game was pretty well developed already by him, a newcomer in board gaming, in the board gaming industry. So I was impressed. I played the game and I liked it a lot. I think still it may be my personal favorite game mechanically from Spielworks because it's so elegant. It's elegant. The card mechanism, it's great. It scales so well. You can play it well with 2, with 3, with 4. But of course, the topic is, and the topic interests me a lot. Again, historian, and
sure.
all that.
Yeah.
But what I really did not want, that people are thinking, well, there are these players, Americans and Europeans, and it's this age, and they are really screwing the people in Africa and in Asia, and they're having fun there. And most probably the inhabitants in Africa, they must have fun as well, being screwed. So no, I think this is a route nobody should go. So I talked to Harald again, and I said, well, I want this dark. Otherwise, I'm not doing this game.
Dark, as in just a really, not macabre, but a very, very heavy theme, right?
Absolutely. Not macabre at
Right.
all. And the card illustrations, this is Harald's idea, or was Harald's idea, 19th century cartoonish a little bit, but they immediately tell you what we think about a thing. Diplomacy, if you look at this card, or some others, they are pretty strong. Or the cover is very strong. But we want to give an impression on this one. No, this is not a light game. Of course, it's also not a simulation. So because all the powers are as strong as the start, it's a game.
Sure.
But at least hopefully. People are thinking about it. It's not about getting victory points. It's also about really special history of the Western world.
Of colonizing, quote unquote, yes. Africa, and as you said, which I appreciate more mature, dark themes and something unique, something different that isn't trading in the Mediterranean or zombies or whatever, fill in the right word there. And the thing that really appealed to me on this is you guys decided to go full on with it and embrace what it is. I mean, the cover itself has, a ball and chain, shackles on it to represent exactly, wow, this is what this game is about, because that's what you're abstractly tackling in this game. And just, I appreciate that you were willing to take the risk. I'm curious, if you did it now, here it is, 2017, would you do anything different than when you published that? 2013, I think it is?
I think so, 12, 13.
Right.
No, graphics outlook, not at all. Maybe even have a stronger title or have this message even stronger. But you have to have the whole team behind you. And I try, even at that time, I try to push the envelope even a little bit harder. But the rest of the team was not necessarily
on board with
me, and for me it was fine. But I would not change this one iota. I would not have something else there. Then I wouldn't have done the game at all.
So it's all about staying true to yourself then.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So any big regrets or like, ooh, wow, I blew that one as far as games that you saw and did not sign? Is there anything that you're like, that's a really good game? Oops.
Too many, of course, too many memories. So if I later
sorry to bring up.
That's absolutely fine. And I think again you have to stay true to yourself. You have to reflect. Why did you see? Now that I see this game published, wow, why didn't I do it? But it's happening. 6 months later, you see so much that you would like to do different in your own games, or you're asking yourself, why didn't I do it with this title? It was possible. But
meaning I should have gone in a different direction with this one game that you published. Gotcha.
Yeah, that I published or did not publish.
Sure.
So, and this is always difficult. But sometimes this is also easier with Spielworks. I'm not necessarily have to think in how many copies will I sell. So there may be a nice trading game where I'm pretty certain that I will sell a certain amount of copies, but if I don't like it, I stay away from it. And even if I later see, wow, this one is really successful, I say, well, yeah, fine, great, no problem. So
it just wasn't for you, right?
Exactly. It's not a Spielworks game.
All right. Biggest lesson that you've learned as a publisher? What is the one thing that you would say that stands out, if there is one thing?
Yeah, most probably today it's that thing. Tomorrow it's a different thing, because the market is changing so much. No, I can't mention a single thing. No. It's too difficult right now for me to answer this.
Okay.
But there are so many lessons. Maybe to be flexible and to listen to other people. Even if you think maybe this is a youngster, he is only 2 years in the hobby as an author, as an editor for a different company, or listen to them. They most of the time there is something in there, and we can learn when we are 15, when we are 25, 35, 45. We can always learn, and don't think, well, I know everything, and just walk away. Maybe this is the single most important lesson.
I would argue that that's a good life lesson and not just a publishing lesson, right?
Absolutely.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about distribution for Spielworks. So for USA, Canada specifically, I mean, obviously, people can order direct from Spielworks. I understand that. But for those that are on this side of the pond, what is the distribution model, and do you foresee that changing anytime soon?
The distribution model right now is Fun Again, so they are exclusive for North America, and most probably, as long as they want to continue in this way, I won't change it. There are always offers from others and from really respectable companies, but it's also a thing about loyalty and respect. And of course, I could sell a lot more into North America using several ones or a large distributor, because Fun Again is first and foremost an online direct dealer of games.
Right, an online game store.
So,
right.
Right, but they are doing a great job, and it's also very easy for me, because I'm already wearing so many hats in the Spielworks games production, and I know this is a single one, and they are taking all the games that they are supposed to get in one run. And for me, it's done. It's done. That's it. That's what it is. And I don't have to worry anymore.
Any plans for anything up in Canada? Because I know if I don't ask the people, all our listeners in Canada will yell at me.
From my side, not really. But of course, I know that it's sometimes a problem for a Canadian one. So I will bring this topic up with Fun again this Gen Con. So in a couple of days, I have a meeting with them. And let's see. But again, it's loyalty. And if they say they want to keep this business, then I'm very, very much inclined to not change it from my side, because to me they are great.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So as you said that, and everybody knows, the hobby is growing at a pretty exponential rate as we go along, which means more and more and more games are coming out each and every year. Do you see this as overall as a positive or a negative from the publisher side as well as from the gamer side?
From a gamer side, let me start with this. I think it's it's truly the golden age of gaming. For each and every taste, there are so many good games. If you want to just play card games that play in 10 minutes, you have 50 good choices. You say, I only play historical games, war games, great choices. You say, I'm only playing family type games, play in 45 minutes. You have great choices. I'm only playing the heavy cardboard style games. You have many choices there. From a gaming standpoint, I think it's really the golden age of gaming. Publisher standpoint, it gets more difficult each year to really stand out among the huge number of games. Especially at Essen, there are so many releases that some companies are now already releasing the games in August, September, like Amigo or Cosmos. The games are already there, at least in distribution. They are still fresh at Essen. And I also thought about not having a title at Essen because I have no marketing budget. And of course, there is some word of mouth, but why should I have a game at Essen? Yeah, people want to play the game. They want to talk to me. I will be there anyway. So it's not necessarily it's not a necessity to have a new game at Essen. Maybe it would healthier if companies are spreading their games over a year. In Germany, it's still very traditional, like 20 years ago. And gaming companies are quite conservative. They have the releases at Nuremberg, February, March, and then for Essen, for October. Of course, the Christmas season is most important. Yes, you want to have new games in the fall, but still, why not have more games in the summer? Especially gamers games, because the gamers are buying games whenever it's out. And if you see that lots of your customers are overseas based, no problem at all, because you know this summer the US convention season is in the summer.
Right, whether it's Origins,
WBC,
Gen Con. Yep.
So it doesn't matter that much anymore. And when you're saying the industry business turnover is growing, it's not happening in Germany anymore, but in the US. The increase is in the US. Germany is sometimes plus 3%. Next year it's minus 2%.
So pretty static.
Yeah, pretty static these days. Whereas in the US, sales are increasing each and every year. Yeah.
So does that mean that we might see down the road that it's less, at least talking specifically for Spielworks, that it's less about Essen, and when a game's ready, it's ready, and so if it's March, it comes out at March or whenever?
Could very well be. So sometimes even the summer games, I have to look up the numbers again, but my summer releases are most of the time, in the recent years, the fastest selling games. Not best selling, because I'm selling out of 1,000 copies, but the fastest selling games. But of course it could be that these are the strongest games, so it's very difficult to see a trend. But La Granja came out in July, Gentes came out in July, immediate sellouts, whereas at Essen, Solarius Mission sold out also in 4 weeks, but I'm not sure if this was because of Essen. probably if it came out in November, it would have sold also in 4 weeks. Or if it came out in July, most probably too.
I don't want to definitively say one way or the other, but the appetite for these heavier games is growing, and it could be something as simple as, doesn't matter when you put them out,
Yeah.
our numbers, and by our numbers I mean those of us that enjoy the heavier games, yourself included, we're growing.
Yeah.
And so therefore doesn't matter what time of year. And I almost would, this is me just thinking out loud, I wonder if it would almost be a benefit to release it in an off-season time, because nothing else is getting released, and so you have that time. You're not fighting 100 other games that are coming out at Essen. And obviously it's more than 100, but I'm saying that might interest that demographic or that market.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you're absolutely right, and especially because I do not have any marketing marketing budget, and this means in the summer, by word of mouth, still some people at least know about the game before it's released. At Essen time, it can happen that nobody's talking about your game at all. On the other hand, of course, if you do not have a new release at Essen, people will post on Facebook, will Twitter, the company's dead. No matter if you post it 5 minutes later and saying, no, I'm here, the game is coming out, it's out in the open. So you have to be really careful. So,
and that goes across welcome to social media in 2017,
yes.
Right? All right, so Capstone Games and to a lesser degree Stronghold Games have reprinted a number of Spielworks titles.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously you have relationships with both Clay and Steven,
Yes.
The heads of Capstone and Stronghold respectively. So is there any kind of, I don't know, handshake or soft agreement that you have with them specifically, or is it just them coming to you first, or again, talking about that loyalty and whatnot? How does that work? Is it coincidence that they keep getting your titles?
Yeah, again, most probably it's not too many US companies are interested in my games, because nowadays they want a game right from the start, not a second print run, although the first print run is just 1,000 copies.
Right.
But they still want original titles. Steven has a model, so Stronghold Games, that they often pick up games from other companies and do them in English language, in an English language edition. But I personally like Steven very much, so he's a great guy, and I love to work with him. So, and he did an outstanding job with La Granja. He also did No Siesta, which was published by Blackfire. He did Kraftwagen, so I know he's very reliable. So that's great. And I knew Clay from a Gen Con, I think 2015. He hadn't published a single game, but he approached me, and I was really curious, because there are so many people trying to enter the hobby industry who have a little bit of money, or maybe quite a bit of money, but have no clue. And if I had thought after our nice talk that, wow, this is another one of these guys, then I would have immediately said, no chance that you are doing this game. But he was very structured, everything was fine, clear mind. So I said, why not? I knew how I started in the industry with Moments in History, with almost no help. And so I said, well, why not give him this game? Because he was asking specifically for it, and I had the clear feeling that he will do a great job on this game. And he's willing to take a risk, because Arkwright had sold 1,000 copies pretty fast. But still, is it good for a bigger print run? The other larger companies who had shown some interest said, no. It won't happen. So, but Clay was determined, and I said, yeah, why not give him that game?
And then ever since, there's obviously Rushfort, Colin Colony, and others.
Yeah, but this is he probably saw these games in the Spielworks catalog, but it's a little bit different because I did not have the rights for these games anymore. So this was done directly with the author, with Thomas Spitzer. So, but Clay is a guy who really knows what he wants to do. So is very good focus, and he saw Orkrite is doing well. It's a gamer's game. Why not try the other ones? Yeah.
Well, I mean, all he does is go back into our back catalog and reprint games that we like, right?
Yes, and which is a good thing.
So you mentioned ADC Blackfire. So can you tell folks a little bit of the partnership and what role you play with that company and how all that ties together?
Yeah, and let me try to be as brief as possible. So ADC Blackfire is the largest European Magic distributor.
Magic the Gathering, the CCG, right?
Yes, and it's actually 3 companies. There's a Czech company, which is even older than the German company. There's a tiny Romanian company. But Blackfire is distributing stuff all over Europe, all over. So I'm working for the German Blackfire Entertainment, but it's very much a European distributor. We term ourselves a European and not a German distributor because we sell much more in English language than in German language. But Magic cards in any possible language, Italian, Spanish, French, Czech, Polish cards are sold all over. Blackfire also sells other trading card games, Yu-Gi-Oh!,
Pokemon, right, sure.
Bushiroad stuff. It has lots of action figures, which is also very nice, and you can sell a ton of them. But I started 2014.
So it's interesting that all this talk that you're talking about ADC Blackfire, you haven't mentioned board games once. Everything but board games.
Yeah, right. Because these are the origins of Blackfire. That's how they started. Although in the Czech Republic, they localize 35 board games a year. They are number one. So titles from Fantasy Flight games, some mass market small games, but also Star Wars stuff or Lord of the Rings in Czech Republic, the LCG. That's what they are doing. And Blackfire Germany hired me in 2014 because they wanted to branch out a little bit from collectible card games and action figures. So also start distributing board games, non-collectible card games. So now we have about 600 different board and card games, mainly
that's
English
a heck of a jump from in 3 years.
Blackfire Germany will move to larger places late this year because Duisburg is way too small, so we need more office space. There are 40 people working for Blackfire in Germany. And to larger areas, larger warehouse, of course, larger offices. And also I'm doing the publishing part. So which means we brought Kraftwagen to the public. We have West of Africa, Kingsville. We have a couple of localized games, Star Realms. We will localize Hero Realms from White Wizard Games. We did Portal from Cryptozoic. And several more. So that's what I'm doing. But I'm also trying to find exclusive partners. You know, Feuerland, who are doing Terra Mystica in German language. So Blackfire is exclusive in distribution for the German editions of Feuerland. Same thing with PD, who did Concordia.
PD Verlag, right?
Exactly. PD
right.
Verlag, PD Verlag. So that's exclusive in distribution for, and we try to find more. That's also my job.
All right. So from where I'm sitting, it sounds like, okay, so you basically find these games for both Spielworks as well as ADC Blackfire.
Right.
So you're wearing both of these hats. How do you decide who gets what then?
Yeah, there is, of course, there is no hard border. There is no hard border. In the end, I have to decide. But the rule of thumb is that a Blackfire game is a Kennerspiel des Jahres. So it's a little bit lighter than your typical Spielworks game. But of course, there are always some exceptions. It could be, if I think there is a really very strong game that needs a broader distribution and it's above Kennerspiel, I would still most probably I would say, well, this has to be a Blackfire game because immediately we can sell 5,000 and not 1,000 of this. So yeah, well, but there's no hard border. So,
They obviously trust you to make
Yeah.
your best judgment on that
Yeah.
because that even though there's no hard border, as you said, there definitely seems in my experience with the two companies, the games that come out, there definitely seems to be a clear delineation in weight between
Yeah.
the two.
Yeah, although I'm saying that Kalimala, the Blackfire October release, could be a Spielworks game because it's mechanically strong. It has a historical topic, although not too strong, but there is some historical flavor in there. But personally, I think the game is so strong, really so strong, that it needs as wide distribution as possible. You never know. Again, the game is released in October, maybe at Essen. Nobody's talking about the game, but I think it will be one of the hottest games at Essen. So for gamers, not for families, of course.
Right.
So that's why Blackfire has this
Okay.
game.
All right. Makes sense. Cool. So going bigger picture now, as a publisher, I mean, do you have any, let's say, opinions or thoughts on Asmodee in regards to the acquisitions that they've been doing over the last 18 to 24 months and the fear on this side as a gamer, the fear of just homogenous, the hobby just becoming homogenized and, one flavor, so to speak?
Yeah. First, I know lots of people at Asmodee, especially Asmodee Germany, but also Asmodee North America, some people in France. And generally, I like them a lot. So these are good people, good vision, no problem there. But if I step back one or at least a couple of meters, then in my opinion, but this is my personal opinion, I don't think that it's a healthy situation at all. Because Asmodee is, in my opinion, not good for the creativity of the whole industry. Of course, you can say, well, they have so many different publishing houses, and each and every one has some certain character, some flavor. Yes, this is true. But Asmodee is not only controlling the publishing side to a large part, but also the distribution part. And this, in my opinion, cannot be good if one company is controlling publishing plus distribution, because they can shut out other distributors. They can shut out retailers if they want. If some retailer does not want to buy from this distributor, it does not get the products. So it's in my opinion, not good at all.
And we're actually running into that here in the States, that
Yes.
you have to have a brick and mortar store to be able to sell Asmodee, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, they modified this. Actually, again, as an online store, you can get Asmodee North America titles again. It's called, I think, MAP.
Right,
It's a
yeah,
double P,
a minimum
of
advertised price. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's again possible, most probably because they saw that they are not selling as much as before. Because this country, you know this way better than me, is so large, and there isn't a brick and mortar store around each corner. So you have to rely even more than in Germany on online stores. It's a reality. It's simply a reality. But in Europe, it's even stronger than in the US. Almost a complete distribution, apart from Blackfire. Getting back to Blackfire for a second, is controlled by Asmodee, and definitely, from my personal perspective, not healthy.
All right. So staying on that note, but bringing it down more towards the designer side of things, are there any trends within the hobby itself, whether it's design trends or anything like that you're not super keen on, or that you're maybe concerned is a bit of a strong word, but you get the idea that you're just like, not really digging that.
Yeah, well, first what we see is with the experience of quite a few gamers, we have lots of very experienced and good gamers nowadays out there for heavy games. We are talking here about the gamers games, and they expect certain things in a game, And it's only fair and understandable that some companies are trying to please these gamers.
Sure, that goes without saying, right?
Yeah, right. But in my opinion, a problem is that some of these games are so much of a brain burner that even if you love heavy games, it's very difficult to enjoy them with this type of gamers at the table, because it's so, you need to, with each and every action you're doing, you need to count up, or you need to look into the future so hard, so badly, that it takes a lot of time. The downtime is getting worse, in my opinion, in a lot of games. And second, some games are so scripted these days, and I do not mean scripted in a way that you can only go in one direction, but in each action demands that you are picking up victory points. In theory, they have lots of freedom, but if you want to win this game, you have to follow certain strategies, and in each turn you need to amass victory points. And this is, of course, the certain kind for some of these very experienced gamers. So it's their type of games. But I think that, in my opinion, the journey is the most important thing, and not picking up victory points and thinking about them too hard.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate you being candid about that, because I mean, obviously, on the gamer side, I know what I like, and I hear about from our listeners and viewers and everything. But it's interesting to hear a fellow heavy gamer, but also publisher, maybe look at things from a different light and find different things that they enjoy about the games that we play.
And it's really difficult to explain for me. So one of my personal favorite games is Here I Stand. It has 40 pages of rules, but still, it's a journey. It's a hell of a ride in the game. You play a card, wow, when something is happening in Europe, something is happening. Whereas in some of the Euro type games, heavy ones, you have only maybe 12 or 16 pages of rules. So you think, well, Here I Stand, and of course, Here I Stand takes 6 hours to play. But Here I Stand is not as scripted, whereas in these Euro-type games, well, it sometimes, of course, I'm generalizing.
Sure,
yeah. Some of them, it's hard to play with some gamers, because for each turn they need 5 minutes. And if they do not spend 5 minutes, then they won't win. So it's mandatory, basically, in order to win, to spend so much time.
So you're saying that and correct me if I'm wrong, that games are inducing AP. It's not that the players are developing AP. It's just that the games are causing the players to do this.
Absolutely. If you want to
in some cases, obviously.
In some cases, always generalizations, what we are having here. But yes, that's what they are doing, because lots of the designers are also so experienced, and they are not dummies. They know what a certain core target group of their games wants, and they want, each and every year they want more. They want more and more and more and more. And if as long as the games are selling, of course, why change? But from a design standpoint, I think this is definitely not good. But who am I? So I don't know anything. It's just my personal
No, and I don't expect you to speak for the whole hobby, but no, and I appreciate that. So on that note, since some of these Euros are getting more and more opaque, might be a good way to put it, what do you think is the best way? Because you see later games on the ADC side, right, the Blackfire side. What do you think is the best way to introduce new players to these heavier games, to a Spielworks game, for instance? How do you bring in new players?
First, to be frank, I don't see it as my mission to bring in new gamers. Not at all. So I see in Germany there's a trend, maybe it's over here as well, bring in more gamers. So it's good for the hobby, it's good for the industry. Yes, of course. If there are 10 times more gamers in this industry, everybody is healthier. You have more gaming partners, all of this. But in my opinion, most of these attempts are a failure. You either are a gamer or you aren't. And of course, I won't introduce you with Here I Stand, for example, unless you're already deeply in history. I started my gaming with war games. And these were my, after Monopoly, after Risk, the games as a kid with my parents. I immediately moved to war games, and I know some other gamers who also start with them. If you really want this, you're a gamer, and let's face this, for 95% of the population, tabletop gaming, board gaming, card gaming is nothing. It's simply not nothing that they will enjoy. Sitting there with some people and looking at a game board, talking to the other players, and make somewhat intelligent decisions, and maybe reading a rules booklet before that is 2 pages long, way too long for too many. The attention span, it's not there. And my mission, I don't want to bring gamers into the hobby. If I'm able to do this, fine. I'm not turning anybody away.
Right, I understand.
I'm glad if somebody says, well, this is my first game, I played a Kraftwagen. I'm into the history of cars. So when I played it, then I looked at the rules. Oh, it looks so complex. And we played it, we're having a great time. I said, well, yeah, great. But no, I don't want to educate somebody or tell them you have to play board games. No, they can. Maybe it's healthier to stay outside and bike or do some other
go
sport.
Hiking or something.
Yeah, maybe it's way better.
You actually brought up one of the things that has become one of my biggest pet peeves in this hobby is the quote unquote gateway game. Mm-hmm. I feel like that does as much damage to gamers as it does help them. Yeah. And I don't know if this is whatever. My thinking is if somebody is interested in history already, why would you start them on a Splendor or on something like, why not? Why I feel like you're almost talking down to their capacity to be able to handle these bigger games and these heavier games. And so the idea of a gateway game kind of offends me because we started out with Dominant Species and Arkham Horror. Mm-hmm. I don't find myself feeling exceptionally smart or smarter than the average bear. But there's no... whereas had I started on something like... I use Splendor a lot as my go-to, but I'm trying to think of Camelot. Mm-hmm. Would be I would have no interest in this, and so I feel like that kind of potentially can turn people off these gateway games with them not knowing that there's this wonderful world of medium and heavy games that intellectually would stimulate them more. That's not to demean or play what you dig. Yeah. But the thing is some of these quote unquote gateway gamers crave bigger games than what these gateway games are. And so I totally agree with you that when people ask us the same question, I'm like, I'll be honest, we don't interact with a whole lot of people that aren't in the hobby that want to become in the hobby because that's not where they usually don't go straight from no games to Arkwright.
No, normally not, of course. But there are so many games. It's a golden age of gaming, and you don't have to start with a simple game. If you feel like I can handle somewhat more, it's also very important. If you want to learn everything yourself, it's possible, but it's way harder, of course, if you already are entering a gaming club. But of course, attending a meeting of a gaming club also shows that you have a large interest in gaming. Otherwise, you would say, no, these may be weird people and I'm not doing this. So it already shows you have some interest. And if I would run a gaming club and somebody, a total stranger who says, well, this sounded so interesting. And I would show him the library and tell him, so what are you interested in? Even if it's a very, in my opinion, a very complex game, I would say, we can try it if you want, and then see if it's your enjoyment. But pointing into different direction, it's very difficult, very difficult.
Yep, I agree. I mean, I have a couple of poker buddies that we tried Little Devils, the little trick-taking game, and they were like, eh. We played Le Havre. They loved it.
Yeah, right.
So there you go. All right, so a couple of things specific to Spielworks now. All right, so two things that I have to ask because, one, I'm curious, and two, I feel like I have an obligation to our listeners and everything. So first and foremost, you were in our review of Solarius Mission. You were very receptive to our criticism of the rule book in it and everything. What's the process of writing and editing the rule books? And has that changed, or is there a pathway?
Yeah.
Because obviously with Gentis, things are remarkably clearer. So there's definite improvement here. I mean, we all learn. So
yeah, no, you are absolutely right. So basically, we screwed up on Solarius Mission in this regard. So the rulebook is way harder than it should be. Could be much easier. One step back here for a second. Of course, nobody. I'm maybe with some exceptions like Fantasy Flight, because they have so many in-house people. I think this is another smart move of Asmodee North America, Fantasy Flight, that they have hired people. So last count, and this is 2 years old.
And you're saying outsourcing this type of thing, but it's in-house, but having specific people for their rule books.
Not only for rules booklet, for the whole development. I think when I last counted, 2015, the Fantasy Flight had 70 people there. And so it's very easy to spend the necessary amount of time because you don't have to rely on freelancers that may have time or may not have time. And personally, I do not trust most people who are saying that they can work on a game, because I'm doing this for more than 20 years, and from 10 people who are saying, well, I can do a good job on this, 9 cannot, although these are experienced gamers. So, but even Ravensburger, Hans im Glück, larger companies than Spielworks by far, they do not have enough time to spend on a product. It's simply, there are rough edges, but this is not an excuse for this. But first, we do not have enough time. You could always say, well, do the game 2 months later. That's what we now try to do. So Gentis, we spend more time on it, and I think it's a marked improvement in components quality, no tiny discs anymore. That you can, if you sneeze, they are gone. Or if you breath too heavily, they are in your nose. So it's difficult. Gentis is not perfect in rulesbook quality, English language. But we are a lot better than in Solarius Mission. And I think in the next couple of gaming projects, improvements will be even stronger. So we are moving in this direction. After Solarius Mission was out, I talked with the manufacturer, I talked with Henning about this, more clear responsibilities, as I touched a little bit upon us. I'm doing only the broad view, not in all nitty-gritty details here. Henning is mainly doing this these days. Manufacturer is taking some extra eyes on all the products. Is this really what it can be, should be? Are they really want these tiny discs? Can this be true? So I think we are on a good track, but I'm also not saying that in the future some now may be really frightened that there are not some problems like in Solarius missions. Hopefully not with rules, because this is very difficult. Of course, there are living rules and all this. This can be changed, but it could be that there is something with components which we simply overlooked.
Sure.
But then I can replace it. I can bring in replacements, and we are sending them out.
Right, and that's exactly what happened with Solarius Mission, correct? The little tiny disc that you're talking about, it was just an oversight?
Yes, it was an oversight. Actually, again, we fucked up. That's what it is. Yeah, it is because at first we ordered the wrong size, so the small ones. We got back from the manufacturer, great manufacturer, by the way. They responded and they quoted these small discs, and we said, "No, this is too small." We caught the error. Mailed it back, but then again back, this was a mistake by the manufacturer. We got again the tiny disc quoted, and we did not look hard enough. So we signed it, proved it, yes, everything's fine, that's what it is. So we got the tiny disc because we asked for them. So we caught the error before that, but of course
Not
it's
the
our
second
mistake.
time. Yep.
It's our mistake. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what it is.
All right. So as far as the one thing, and you agree with me on this regarding rule books, that the most important thing is to be able to have a good first impression with the players, because if the rule book is difficult, then that turns players off from the game and puts things off on the on the wrong foot. So it's good to hear that things are trending in the right direction, and you're working to improve on those. And I mean, God knows you could go back and listen to our early episodes and hear how terrible the audio sounds. So I understand in ever improving, you try and get better and learn from your mistakes, learn from things that didn't work before. And so I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt. So that's encouraging to hear that things are definitely trending.
Hopefully,
that way.
yes. They should be trending in this direction. And this is no excuse at all, what I'm now saying. But also, I'm under the impression, and again, this is not meant to be on Solario's mission, where the rules booklet, the English language one, is simply bad, the original one. But some gamers are way too fast with rules questions.
Yes.
If you see some pretty simple games, very popular games, where the rules booklet, in my opinion, when I've played the game, and I had hardly any rules question, and you see there are 500 different rules questions on BGG. How is this possible?
I harped on people about Lisboa, that it's brand new, and I think the rule book is a fantastic rule book. I went on to BGG and there were something like 50-something, 70-something questions. And I just randomly opened up a dozen of them. And I'm like, it's there in the rule book. It's there in the rule book. And so, yes, I agree with you that us as players need to take the responsibility to do a good job of, you know what? Let me double check and see if it's actually in here. Nope, it should be right here. It doesn't make sense. Okay, then I'll go ask. But a lot of times that isn't happening, and that's a shame. And that's on us as gamers, not necessarily y'all on publishers.
Right. And again, this has nothing to do with Solario's mission.
Sure, just big picture.
I saw this with other games. Maybe it's also just the excitement of players. They have read the rules, they are excited about playing the games, and they do not see one or two answers, so they are so excited. I want to share my experience on BGG. Maybe reflect a little bit.
I 100%. Again, this goes back to welcome to 2017, unfortunately. So yeah, I think players can do a better job of that, which then corrective criticism is welcome. I mean, anybody worth their salt welcomes that kind of thing. But when it's pretty obvious in the rule book, take a second and look. I 100% agree with that. All right. Any interest in picking up older games and reprinting? I mean, you haven't. I
will.
Okay. Yeah.
I will. Next year, we have Ground Floor, the second edition by David Shaw.
Yes. And we reviewed that 2.5-3 years ago, I think, on the show.
Yeah, there are some market improvements on there, so the game is faster. It was too slow, especially with a full set of gamers.
Yeah, with 5 players, or 6 players.
Even 6.
Yes.
We are moving it back to a maximum of 5 players, going back from 9 to 7 turns. But we are also adding some other stuff. So there is now a stock exchange as an additional place to put your employees or to spend your money on. So there will be some reprints. It's not the norm. that we are looking also into some other games for the future.
Cool.
Again, it has to be a game where I'm interested in, because Ground Floor, I said earlier, Captains of the Gulf could be a new colony. Again, mechanically, different worlds have nothing in common. But because they are so specific, and Ground Floor could be a new Orc-Rite. Again, mechanically, nothing in common. But Ground Floor is also, in my mind, a movie is running. So this is how it could be done. I'm doing this and I'm doing this, and my company is growing. I'm building this up from the ground floor. There, it's thematically, it's very strong, a very, very strong game. And on top of that, although my main market is not necessarily in Germany, this game hasn't been done in German language. And Spielworks will have a German and English language edition.
Okay, cool. All right, good. I'm excited to see what else comes down the road. So yeah, very cool. All right, so a couple more, and then we'll close everything up. So I know you're heading straight to Gen Con after you leave HCHQ. Like I'm leaving here in about 2 hours, and you're leaving in the morning. Is there anything that you'd like to do or see or experience or anything like that while you're here? And by here, I mean both, whether it be Denver area or whether it here in the States, that maybe you don't have time for, but you would like to?
Yeah, definitely here in Denver. I want to come back because it's a beautiful landscape over here, and I want to do some hiking because
That'd be
I enjoy
awesome.
this. And I know that you are doing some hiking,
Yep.
so we could do this together. That would be really great. Indianapolis, it's not my favorite city. It's not a really bad city, but I do not know too much about it apart from the convention center and the hotels, surrounding hotels. United States, it's one of the most beautiful countries. It's really, if you look at California, and then if you look at the New Jersey, New England part, it's really beautiful and so diverse. But for me, it's always difficult, a long-distance travel. I'm not a good traveler, and sitting in economy class in a plane.
Nobody likes that, yeah.
So it's hard. So, and I do not have that much of a time. So I have to juggle it a little bit. But hopefully I can make it also not only to hiking in Denver, but to HeavyCon.
That was my next question. So 2018, that would be awesome to have you there. That would be
planned.
really cool.
It's planned.
Good. All right. All right. So the last thing before I let you get out of here is every time I do one of these conversations with Heavy Cardboard, I ask all my guests the same 6 questions that are thoughtful, but hopefully a little bit lighter and fun, but hopefully make you think as well. So just answer off the top of your head the first thing that comes to mind. You ready?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. How old would you be if you didn't know how old you are?
Too tough a question at that time. So
how old do you feel? How old do you feel?
I think definitely younger, but it really depends. In the morning, sometimes I'm 70. I think I'm 70, and then I see some kids playing soccer outside, and I think, well, they are really bad. I'm better than they are in their early 20s. So and of course, I have no chance to compete. So it really depends on my mood.
Okay, all right, fair enough. If you could master one skill that you do not have right now, what would it be?
An artistic skill, for sure. If it's in writing, if it's in music, I would appreciate this. In painting, something like this. So I'm very much not an artist at all. So nothing in literature as well. Nothing in music. So this I really regret.
Okay, all right. If you could have dinner and conversation with any one person in history, who would it be? First one that comes to mind.
Napoleon Bonaparte.
Okay, why? Why him?
Because in my opinion, he's a fascinating character. Of course, he tried to be a conqueror of almost all of Europe, and
right.
He didn't care too much about killing hundreds of thousands, or not only of Frenchmen, but of others. But on the other hand, His legislative measures are really so much ahead of their time. He brought so much freedom in this regard to parts of Europe. On this Code Napoleon, so still 50 years later, it was progressive, and he pushed away lots of these old style royal houses. Of course, in 1815 they were reintroduced. But this, in my opinion, he is a very fascinating character. I'm not fascinated, I'm saying he's a great person who is responsible for so many deaths of people. Cannot be, in my opinion, a great guy. But I would like to have dinner with him and ask him some questions about all this.
That's a great answer. Very cool. What are 3 things that you want more of right now? Could be time, could be money, could be something physical, it could be a characteristic, an idea, anything. What 3 things?
Time.
Of course.
Then being, at least for one soccer season, be at the top of my quality from that time. And actually, I would give a lot of money if there would be a wizard telling me, well, I have some cash problems. Please give me that amount of money. But for that, you are able to play at the top of your form. I'm not saying like a Ronaldo or like a professional player, just one season, one soccer season at that top level being. I would give a lot for that. It's not only playing the game, but the camaraderie with the players. Totally exhausted after a soccer game, sitting there after a training session, after a match. That is really something special if you have ever experienced this. Third thing, because my answer was already so long, I don't know. Second thing was too long.
The second one was great. I've never heard anyone take it in that direction. That's cool.
But actually, what I said first, time is more important. So time is the most important thing that I'm missing.
Yeah, I think we all could probably do with more time. What do you appreciate most in your friends?
Several different things, but most, if it's just one thing, that they will help me. They will help me if I need it.
Okay.
But of course, several other things.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Okay. Last question, and I think you already kind of answered this, but what is your absolute dream job?
Most difficult. You're thinking about soccer? Maybe it could be a soccer player or a soccer coach, but I was soccer coach and only at amateur level, and this exhausted me. So most probably I would stay away from this. Maybe I'm saying I would be in the management, and I would like to run for a season as a manager, Schalke 04. So and most probably after that, Schalke is no longer. So I managed to run them into the ground. But yeah, if it's one single job, I would love to try it. Although I'm not good enough because I never played hockey. But as a hockey coach, you have so much more influence during the game, and so in my opinion, it's more a coach's dream to be in hockey. But I do not know enough about the sport.
Awesome, that's all I got. That's it. That's a wrap. So Uli, thank you so much for both coming here and visiting, which is pretty special and pretty exciting for us. I'll be honest, but also for sitting down and doing this today and taking the time. This has been enlightening, very much so.
Yeah, well, it's all my pleasure. Really, I enjoyed the day. I enjoyed Gentes. I enjoyed this one. Hopefully, my answers made at least a little bit of sense.
Totally.
It's very difficult to talk about somewhat theoretical things like design in so broad strokes. So it's very difficult. And especially because I missed this earlier, so maybe you allow me one more sentence on this. Games, in my opinion, need a soul. They need to breathe. And some of the modern day designers forget this. So a game can be mechanically really strong, but it can have no soul. That everything is working, but you are looking at the game after you finish it, and I say, wow, seemed to be great, seemed to be interesting, everything is working perfectly, but do we want to play this game again? No, because sometimes the rough edges, like in a diamond, so it may be something so where you could say after the game, but your one strategy is maybe a little bit stronger, but it's so much, it's still in there because it's so interesting to have it in there. So yeah.
It's funny. I'm sitting here laughing, listening to this, and just shaking my head because I have said these exact words, that there is such a thing as a too polished, too smooth game.
Absolutely.
It loses its soul, it loses its character, and it's just meh.
Yeah, right, absolutely, and you have to know this. It's games is not, in my opinion, of course, large majority of the, especially lighter gamers are disagreeing. A game needs a soul, needs something that sets it apart, even if it's mechanically absolutely smooth and absolutely sound. It's not good enough to be a heavy game, at least.
Yep, that sums it up really well. So, Uli, thank you very, very much for doing this. Really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody both watching and listening. Thanks to our patrons. Check it out, patreon.com/heavy cardboard, if you would like to support the show and if you want to encourage more of this. So thank you, everybody. And on behalf of myself and Amanda, thank you, Uli, for just making a really wonderful last 36 hours. So thank you.
So my pleasure again. So thank you.